recording will miss that part. Okay, so I'd like to get things started. The first person to speak will be Ricky Larkin, a PhD student in SLS, who's going to talk with you guys about the Peace Corps. And Ricky, you should be able to share your screen.
Great, thank you very much. Let me share real quick. Okay, so hi everybody. Thank you, Kenny. Like Kenny was saying, my name is Ricky Larkin. I was a Peace Corps volunteer in the Philippines from 2013 to 2014, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that. So Peace Corps has 3 goals, and if you're thinking about joining, it should be noted that you have to have American citizenship to be able to join as a Peace Corps volunteer. But there's 3 goals. First is to help people of interested countries meet their need for trained men and women. The second is to promote a better understanding of Americans on the part of the people served. And the third is to promote a better understanding of other peoples on the part of Americans. So these 3 goals have been part of Peace Corps since the founding, which was in '61. And they kind of guided the institution, right? It's definitely one of these institutions that was created during the Cold War. But I think the 3 goals have kind of served as these guiding principles. And so there's been already over 240,000 people that have served in the Peace Corps, and there's been 142 countries that people have gone to. And so these percentages, they are before the pandemic, right? A lot of this information is before the pandemic, because as you all know, once COVID started, all these kind of programs started calling people back and shutting down, but there are plans to reopen. So before the pandemic, there's a variety of types of volunteers. So there's agricultural volunteers, community economic development volunteers, education, which makes up the largest part, and which is what I was also part of, and that's where the teaching English comes under, environment, health, and youth and development. So by far the largest is the education field. There's also 2% of volunteers that are Peace Corps response, and these could also be programs that go toward developing language education programs and but also any of these other response can be any of these other categories as well. But the difference between response and normal volunteers is the normal volunteer is a 2-year commitment, and that's for anybody as long as you meet the minimum qualifications of Peace Corps, whereas the response volunteers are typically a 3 to 12-month commitment, depending on the project that you apply to work on, and that's a very specific project that you're working on. So that's people with usually with at least a master's, if not more, and they go to do very specific projects. So this will be more about the general Peace Corps experience. So before COVID, there was 7,334 volunteers that were active, and these are the places, the regions of the world. This is how Peace Corps divides the planet. So these regions are where volunteers worked, and there's the percentages for that. Yeah, so I was in the Philippines, and I was in Northern Samar here. The Philippines is kind of divided into 3 regions, as many of you know, Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao, and I was in the Visayas region. I was placed in an elementary school in San Jose in Northern Samar. And what you can kind of expect for Peace Corps, at least with teaching and going through this kind of program, is you would be in training, and that takes about 3 months roughly, and that training is done in country. So typically you meet all together and at the airport somewhere in the United States, and then you fly to the country that you're going to. And you spend your first 3 months doing training. This was the old logo. You can see I was part of the old people. And there's been a kind of a shift in Peace Corps, because when I applied, you applied and they sent you anywhere. But now when you apply, you can apply for specific countries. So you can check out their website, and there's lots of information in different countries that you can apply to. And so you do your 3 months of training, and then you start to go and you live with your host families. A lot of these pictures are during training. These are host families. So you get to live with 2 different host families, typically the one that you meet in training and then the ones that you meet after the training. But that depends on the country as well, you know, because some countries, people are more likely to live alone in the community, have their own space. So it depends. I taught, like I said, at an elementary school with kids, and you would always work with a co-teacher, at least in the Philippines. And so though I would never be alone, and that's been a big push, especially lately with new policies in the Peace Corps, is that if you're going to be teaching, especially if you're teaching with children, you always have a counterpart with you. There's some more pictures from my other site. So we did a lot of teacher trainings where we would get a ton of teachers from all over the province and region. I think it was over, by the time we finished all of these trainings, it was something like 1,000 teachers total that we had went through these teacher trainings. So in like literacy education. So you want to go in with the Peace Corps kind of having this idea that, oh, you might go for teaching English, but you might do a lot of other things too. These books here are part of a library project I worked on, and you kind of find different projects to do while you're working in the community, because it's a 2-year-long commitment. So you're gonna need to find things to do. That chicken came into my classroom one time and I had to catch it. So sometimes you catch chickens in your classroom that you don't expect. So a few tips if you plan to apply to Peace Corps is you want to decide on that 2-year commitment or the response. And like I said, response volunteers, you need to have the master's minimum requirement and then go from there. So you make that decision before you apply, because you only apply to one or the other. Verify that you meet all of the qualifications for your desired post, because now you are going to be applying to different countries. So verify the end project. So verify you meet those qualifications, but be willing to go anywhere, because when you mark on your application, like which projects you want to apply to, you're much more likely to get a Peace Corps volunteer position if you are willing to just go anywhere in the world. That opens up the whole world. So where they have, especially now with COVID, because countries get shut down quickly or open up quickly depending on whether or not how the COVID situation is going. So that there might be some, because this will be the first kind of time, I think they're planning on opening next year, maybe, we'll see. So it'll be kind of the first time that this is tried with the pandemic going on. Verify you meet medical qualifications, and this depends on your own medical history, but there are certain medical conditions that Peace Corps cannot accommodate for. So you want to go on the website and check that out. But typically when you apply, you will also do the medical part. So you'll have to get doctor verification. You have to go to the doctor and they'll say if you can go or not, and then sign you off, and you'll go through that process during the application. And then talk to a recruiter first is always a good idea, so they know to be on the lookout. Typically the recruiters are the ones who interview you. Speaking of recruiter, I have information. I'll put it in the chat box too. We have a new recruiter, Kamaka Diaz. He did his there you go, it's in the chat. Did their service in Madagascar from 2016 2019. So, and they're also doing you should have got an email today. I think it was sent out to the whole university, another event on November 18th. So any questions can be sent to the recruiter. Yeah, if I don't answer them after a while. Okay, there you go. Thank you. That's it.
All right, thanks very much, Ricky. So that was about the Peace Corps. Next up, we have Michelle Kunkel, who's going to be talking about the Fulbright English Teaching Assistance Program.
Thank you, Kenny. Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming today and welcome. Let me just share my screen here. All right. Can everybody see my screen okay? And can you hear me? Okay, perfect. All right, so actually I'll be talking about two things, and I'm sorry that you all have to hear me talk for so long, but I'll be talking about Fulbright English Teaching Assistantship and the English program in Korea, but I will try to be expeditious in my explanations. So as everyone knows, my name is Michelle. I'm a PhD student in second language studies, and these two programs that I'll talk about are two programs that I participated in before starting my studies here at UH. So the first one, the Fulbright English Teaching Assistantship, I was a Fulbright ETA to Senegal in the western part of Africa from 2015 to 2016. And I was placed at a national teacher training college in the capital city, Dakar. My placement was a little bit different because I applied for the ETA-ship after I'd finished my master's degree, but that's not a requirement, but it's just to give you all an idea that what I'll talk about in my experience might be a little bit different than the experience of others if you talk to other alumni from there. So just a brief overview of the program. So the idea with this assistantship is that you will work in classrooms all over the world, and your purpose is to provide assistance to local English teachers. So your primary duty is to help teach English, but on top of that, you're also expected to serve as a cultural ambassador for the US. But I shall also say that institutions and hours will vary by location. So on the right side, I just took a snapshot of what some of the different requirements are for different host countries in Europe. So I would suggest if you're interested, one of the first things you should do is go online and see what kinds of information is available for the country you're interested in. So you can see that for each country that's listed here, there are a different number of grants available. The institutions where you might work are quite different. The type of city where you will work is different, hours, and also language requirements. So it's important to do your research about the host country that you are planning to visit. In terms of eligibility, you do need to be a US citizen at the time of application, and you also need to have finished your bachelor's degree before your grant starts. Depending on the country, you may or may not need to show that you have proficiency in a local language. It's important to check what the requirements are, and you may need to submit some extra documentation. And another thing I think that's important to point out is that you're also expected to not have lived in the host country for more than 6 months before you apply. And on the right side, you can see me and the team. So you can see that some of these people are the other ETAs who were placed in different cities. And 2 of them were English language fellows who were also in Senegal at the same time that I was there. So in terms of my duties, I wanted to just talk a little bit about working at my site. So as I mentioned, I was placed at a teacher training college. So I was mostly teaching teachers. So I taught 2 sets of teachers. One of them was a set of teachers who had gotten a bachelor's degree, and then they came to the teacher training college to get extra certification. And then the other group was people who had gotten a master's degree, and they came to get their certification. So I taught them, but I also did things like help them with their micro teaching. I served as a kind of observer for micro teaching. And one of the things that I got to do that was really fun was actually go out into the community. So you can see on the right side, this was from a classroom observation that I went to go and do. I got to see what teachers were actually doing in the classroom and then talk to them afterwards about their experience. In addition to that, I think Fulbright is similar to what Ricky said in that you do have to go out and you have to look for other opportunities because the amount of time that you'll spend teaching is not going to be 40 hours a week. So I tried to get involved in other ways. 2 of the things that I did was working with the regional English language office at the embassy. So you can see on the left side, I had volunteered to run a conversation and film hour every Wednesday. So this is a picture of all the people who came to participate and the ambassador. And then on the right side, I got involved with the Senegalese English Teachers Association. So I would go to their meetings. I would see what do they need help with? Do they want a presentation? Do they want resources? What are the things that they need? And you can see on the bottom here, me and 2 of the other ETAs decided to put something together for this group of teachers who were in a city outside of Dakar. So I tried to take advantage of all the different opportunities that were available beyond my site too, to help myself keep busy. And then lastly, I think this is something that's worth mentioning because I don't know that anybody ever talks about it, but I think it's really important to think about how you're going to maintain your relationships after your grant is over. So I just wanted to show some of the things that I've done. The first picture up here was I kept in touch with some teachers, and I was able to meet up with them the year after I finished my grant at the TESOL conference in Seattle. On the bottom, I attended the pre-departure orientation for Fulbright. So all the people that are here were people who had gotten selected to attend the next year. So I went to go as a resource, and I also made sure that I took them to a Senegalese restaurant so they would get an idea of what food was like before they went. And they would know the names of some things to order before they were just thrown into the country. And the right side, this is probably the thing I am most proud of. This was a book written in English by one of my students. He had translated a lot of the songs from Youssou N'Dour, who is the guy in the picture here. He's like Senegalese Elvis. He translated them into English and he commented on them and put them together thematically. And so I helped him to edit this book and I wrote the foreword, but we did it in around 2017. And he went out and he found a way to get it published. And now it's out there in the world. It was just published last year. So I'm super proud of that. And I feel really fortunate that he asked me to help him. So I think that's something that's really important to consider anytime you go on any of these kinds of exchange programs. So lastly, in terms of tips for the application, on the right side, I listed the things that I think are the two most important things for this program. And they're both writing about yourself. As a writing teacher, I know it's really hard. It's hard to write about yourself. These are the kinds of things you need to start early. So I would say doing your research, finding out about the program and the application process, researching the host country, and then starting to draft these two big pieces of the application are really important so that you can keep working on them. Secondly, I would say use the resources that are available at UH campus. So there are on-campus advisors. The undergraduate advisor, Dr. Gilliland, is here today. There's also a separate advisor for master students. They're really great in helping you prepare your application and giving you feedback on your statements, the two statements you're drafting. And then lastly, I would suggest too, if you're not familiar with education, your degree is not in education, then I would do a little bit of work to get qualified so that you have some background at least about what's expected in a classroom before you get sent out onto this grant. Yeah. Okay, Kenny, I want to check before I go on. Do we have time for me to talk about EPIC or should I take a break? Okay. All right.
Lots of time. I was going to reintroduce you, but I don't have to now.
Okay, great. So then the second program I want to talk about is EPIC English program in Korea. So in this one, I was assigned to teach at an elementary school in Seoul, Nanu Elementary School. And I did this from 2011 to 2013. So about 10 years ago. This was actually good to help me jog my memory about what I actually did on this program. So a summary of this program, it's similar to the Fulbright ETA-ship, but there are a couple of differences. One is in terms of acronyms, I should say over here on the right side, you can see what these mean. So EPIC is English Program in Korea. This is a program that's sponsored by Ministry of Education in Korea, and they recruit English teachers for all the provinces in Korea. And then they work separately with metropolitan offices of education and provincial offices of education to help assign people to different places. And then SMOE stands for Seoul Metropolitan Office of Education. And this is the department that I worked under. So they are EPIC's partner in Seoul, and they're the ones who place teachers in public schools in and around Seoul. So in general, you'll see here that I've got a lot of ironic quotes here. If you want to know why I put them in there, feel free to ask me during the Q&A. I won't get into it now, but basically the idea is that they place native speakers into public schools around Korea to help Korean English teachers. So your primary responsibility is to co-teach with Korean teachers. It's very similar to what Ricky was mentioning about the Peace Corps. And you do this for around 20 hours a week. And then in terms of other goals of the program, your purpose is to help to improve English speaking abilities of Korean teachers and students, and also to introduce new teaching methods to the Korean education system. That's from the EPIC website. So in terms of qualifications, I'll just mention two things. One of them is on the left side, English language proficiency. They expect that you're going to be a citizen of one of the 7 countries that's listed here, and also that you have attended junior high to university in one of the countries that are listed above. And then in terms of qualifications and certification, you should have at least a bachelor's degree from one of the countries that's on the left. And something that I think is important, this is an important change from when I first applied, is that if you have a bachelor's degree that's from a discipline that's not related to education or teaching or SLS, then you also need to have some kind of teaching certification or a teaching license. When I applied about 10 years ago, it was pretty much just as long as you have a bachelor's degree, you can make it. But now they're starting to be a little bit pickier. And so you do need to have some background, at least in teaching English. So unfortunately, as I mentioned, 2011 is 10 years ago, back before I had a smartphone. So I don't have any pictures really of this time that were easily accessible. So I'll just tell you about my school. This is a picture of my school that I was able to find online. Pretty big school. There are grades K through 6 here. So my primary duty was to work with Korean English teachers and to co-teach English classes for grades 3 through 6. But the teaching duties were only about 20 hours a week, and I was expected to be on site for 40 hours. So some of the things that I did in the meantime were I offered a conversation hour for all the teachers in the school if they were interested in coming to practice their English. I also would help with school events. So we would have things like English contests, we would have performances and other extracurricular activities. So I would volunteer to help out with those. And then I was expected to plan and facilitate English camps during our break. So I got to make those up, basically do whatever I wanted for 2 weeks, which was kind of fun because it was a break from using the textbook. And then lastly, this is something that I should also say. I attended all school team dinners and outings, anything that was related to my department, I went to. This wasn't expected, but I think in terms of community building, it's kind of like what I mentioned before about maintaining relationships. It's really important to force yourself to go out and do those. So I kind of took that on myself and made sure that anytime I was offered something, I went to it. And so then my tips for this, I'm going to point out 2 things. One is a personal statement is a requirement, and then a sample lesson plan, including materials, is also a requirement. So those are things that you will want to prep and get ready ahead of time. As I mentioned before, just with Fulbright, you also want to start thinking about this early. I would say particularly the visa requirements, it takes a long time to get all the documents ready and to get everything ready. So you want to research the program, the application process, and all the documents that you're going to need for your visa. Secondly, I would recommend that you contact a recruiting agency because they can give you a lot of guidance in terms of what the personal statement should look like, what the lesson plan should look like, and also lots of ideas and tips for doing the interview. And another thing is that they're really helpful in helping you figure out what you actually need to do for your visa, what the documents should look like, where you need to go to get them. They can be really, really helpful for that. And then thirdly, I would suggest, since you're here and you have access to SLS, I would ask SLS professors and maybe EPIC alumni for their feedback on your documents. And I think they can also really help you with interview practice as well. And then lastly, I think this goes without saying, but it's also really important. Learn Korean. If you are planning to go, definitely learn. It will make a huge difference and help you a lot in terms of maintaining maintaining relationships, but also in terms of just living there. So that's it for me. Thanks, everybody. Sorry you had to listen to me for so long, but if you have any questions, post them in the chat or I'm happy to answer them at the end.
Right, thanks very much, Michelle. Get yourself a drink of water or something. You had double duty there. Thanks a lot. But 2 really great programs that you talked about. Okay, next up, many people have heard of the JET program, Japan Exchange and Teaching Program. Scott Andrade, who is in our master's program in SLS, is going to talk about that program and his experiences there. Scott?
Aloha, everyone. The JET program had an information session last month. So I'll be reusing my slides and combining some of the slides that was used in that presentation. So give me a moment, I'll share my screen. This one. Present. Okay, so as Kenny said, my name is Scott Andrada, currently a student here in the SLS program, the master's degree. I just got back from the JET program in July. I spent 4 years on the JET program. I guess I'll work backwards. I'll talk about my experience and then general qualifications and explanation about the program. So in my placement, I was placed in Fukuoka here, all the way down south of Japan here, quite far from Tokyo. And this here is the symbol of Fukuoka, and each prefecture has flags and whatnot. So as for my placement, I was placed in a semi-urban. Yeah, the reason I state this is because in this program, if you do apply, you will be placed anywhere throughout these prefectures, rural to semi-urban to urban big cities like this. I was assigned to one school, and the amount of classes I had were around 15 to 16 classes a week. And I was a lead teacher for 10 of the classes, and tag team teach for 5 to 6 of those classes. So just like Ricky and the other programs mentioned, like you'll be asked to co-teach, and I guess one of the your main roles is to assist in language teaching, but you will be either lead teaching or assistant lead teaching depending on your placement. The reason why I had a lot of classes here is the unique school that was placed at. Within Fukuoka, there's only 5 schools that have a like English program. Like on top of the required English classes that the students have, that I was in charge of teaching as well. There was a English program where me and another assistant language teacher, ALT here, where we were in charge of our English program. And just like the duties that the previous presenter talked about, where the school had a lot of like events that tied to English. We had our English drama, English debate in November, and all throughout the school year. Yeah, so any questions regarding my placement? Yeah, you can ask me in the Q&A portion here. So if you're in a JET program, you'll be placed and paid as a certified teacher. You'll be paid the same, like a salary as as a paid employee. This picture here is an example of a typical Japanese classroom. Okay? And my desk is right behind this student. This is my student on her graduation day. Yeah, so here is you could do outside of teaching, you could meet friends and experience Japanese culture and find new hobbies and interests here. All right, and of course, travel. Yeah, and the application timeline here, unfortunately, the deadline for this year in 2021 was last week, Friday. So if you do intend to apply, you have to keep in mind these application timeline here. So the next period will be for the 2023 intake. So it'll open up in mid-September of next year. Yeah, and these dates are keep in mind during the COVID season, but from my knowledge, they try to keep these deadlines pretty strictly here as follows. Yeah, after the July 31st, usually there is a orientation period before you're placed into your prefecture. The orientation period is 3 days and 2 days, 3 nights and 2 days within Tokyo. And more information about the phases of application, orientation, and your placement you can find on jetprogramusa.org for most up-to-date information. And for application tips, here are a lot of documents listed here before the deadline. Yeah, I'm not going to go through each one, but I would say other than the application, the 2 most important part of the application period is your essay, the statement of purpose, and 2 letters of recommendation. For the interview phase, these 2 parts here are really important, and they will ask questions pertaining to your any questions that you put up on your application and statement of purpose. Okay, and lastly, here is more information. I'll copy this and put this in the chat here. Lisa Sakamoto is the liaison for the JET program. She's a liaison for the Consulate General of Japan. And yeah, any information or if you want to apply, please ask Lisa here. Starting in 2020, because of COVID, the whole application period is all online now. Okay, and I want to end my presentation with a meme. Right, a lot of people apply to the JET program to experience Japanese culture, but most of your days in this program will be at your school in front of your students, like this here. Yeah, of course you'll make friends and you'll be a member of your school. This is the first year teachers in my cohort. Yeah, so sorry I rushed through my information. If you have any more questions, we can please ask them in the question and answer period. Thank you.
All right, thanks very much, Scott. Sorry for butchering your pronunciation of your family name when I introduced you. Andrada, not Andrade. Sorry about that. Okay, so we've got one more program, overseas program to go. That is the teaching assistant program in France. And we have an alum of the MA program in SLS, Haley Canito. Let me know if I butchered your family name as well. Okay, take it away.
Thank you, Kenny. Can everyone see my presentation okay? No, it's not sharing. Okay.
Scott, can you stop sharing?
Here.
Okay, now try Haley.
How's that? Okay, great. All right. Hi, everyone. I just want to thank Kenny for the invitation to present, and thanks to my fellow panelists. I'm really enjoying hearing about all these different programs. As Kenny said, my name is Haley Canizzo. I participated in the SLS program. I got my master's there, and I'm currently a program associate at the East West Center, where I work in their education and leadership program. So I'm going to talk to you about TAPIF, is how we say it with the French accent, which is the teaching assistant program in France. And so what exactly is TAPIF? I think it's maybe one of the lesser known language teaching programs. And it's run by the French Ministry of Education. It's part of a larger language assistant program in France. And each year they send over 1,500 American citizens and permanent residents to teach in public schools across all regions of France, but also in French departments overseas. So it's a 7-month-long teaching contract that goes from October until April, and placements are in primary and secondary schools. So what you can expect if you participate in TAPIF, it seems to be one of the lighter teaching loads out of these programs. So you're expected to spend 12 hours a week in-person teaching, and then the rest of the time you can use for planning or for doing other cultural activities at your school. And usually you'll be assigned to up to 3 schools. So it really just depends on your placement. You will receive a stipend of 750 euros, which right now is about 850 US dollars a month. That doesn't sound like a lot living in Hawaii, but I can assure you that the cost of living, Paris excluded, in France is much less expensive than in the United States. And this is enough for a modest lifestyle. So that'll cover your basic needs, apartment, food, etc. You'll also get health insurance and a visa, of course. And the opportunity to develop your teaching skills, your language skills, your cross-cultural competencies, the possibility to participate in the program twice, so you can renew once, and to travel and network with other language teachers and young professionals. These are the eligibility requirements. I won't go through them in detail. You can find them on the TAPIF website, but essentially you need to be a citizen or a permanent resident between the age of 20 and 35. One of the most important requirements, you do have to have an intermediate proficiency in French. So the minimum is a B1 level on the European Framework of References for Languages. They really encourage French majors and minors to apply. But if you're not a French major or minor, you can still participate in the program. You just have to demonstrate that you have a proficiency in French that's equivalent to 3 semesters of college French, or that you've lived or worked abroad in a Francophone country. And when I talk about the application process, I'll talk a little bit more about how you can demonstrate that if you are not a French major or minor. You don't actually have to have any prior experience teaching or working with children or adolescents. However, it is highly recommended, and you need to at least demonstrate an interest in education or in teaching. So my personal experience, I participated in TAPIF for 2 years, starting in 2014. I loved the experience so much that I renewed my contract. I was in 3 primary schools in Marseille, and I worked with children who were aged 6 to 11 years old. So like some of these other programs, in theory, you're meant to co-teach. It's an assisting program, but many people find when they get there and they're on the ground that most of the schools expect you to sort of take the lead on teaching. Some people love that, some people don't. If you really just want to co-teach, you can advocate for that and you have someone who can advocate for you. But I personally love the fact that they wanted me to really just take over because it allowed me to do what I want and to mold the experience to how I wanted it to be, and to really gain that experience being in front of a classroom and developing those skills of classroom management and teaching. You work with a team of teachers in your school, and there's lots of opportunity for travel and to improve your French. So just to show you where I was, Paris is up there more in the north, and I was all the way down in the south. Marseille is a part of the Provence-Alpes-Côte d'Azur region. I worked in Marseille and I lived in a small town called Aix-en-Provence, and then I would commute in every day. The south of France is a beautiful region. If you're coming from Hawaii, it's probably a good transition because there's a lot of sun and it's right on the water and a temperate climate. Here's a few pictures I have with my students. So on the left, that was, we had Carnival. So we all dressed up and I was a superhero. And then on the right, that's just a funny picture that I took with one of my classes with my students. I realized when I was going through my pictures, I didn't have as many pictures with my students as I would have liked, but believe it or not, smartphones were kind of just becoming a thing back in 2014. However, it did give me the opportunity to go through all of my travel photos and to make you all want to go to France. So I'm going to show you some of those just to give you an idea of what it was like to live there. So these are pictures of Marseille. On the right, that's actually the view I had every morning when I would commute into work. I'd get off the bus and that was my view. It was beautiful. These are pictures of the south of France and Aix-en-Provence, which was the village I lived in. So that region of France is really known for limestone. So it gives a lot of the buildings this sort of yellow, charming yellow color. and a lot of blue shutters. And so this street you see here pictured, they're called Les Ruelles. These small streets are very characteristic of the region. So you'll see lots of plants and flower markets and colorful and sunshine. It's just a wonderful place to be. It's also very common to see lots of villages sort of atop hilltops, cascading down the hilltop. And again, sort of some of the typical houses that you'll see there. Where I lived was famous for having Le Mont Saint-Victoire, which is this mountain pictured here. It's known for being painted by Cézanne, the famous painter. And of course, it goes without saying that the food there is amazing. So we can all just take a minute to appreciate the pictures of these lovely pastries. Doing this program gives you a lot of opportunity to get to know the host country and culture. So like I said, you can participate for up to 2 years, which is a good amount of time. So I had the opportunity to travel all throughout France. Here's a few pictures from my visits to Paris. But you'll find that once you're in Europe, it's actually quite easy and inexpensive to travel. There's lots of low-cost airlines. So I could go from Marseille to Rome in Italy for 40 euro on a flight. And so I had the opportunity, and should you wish, you would have the opportunity to travel a lot. One of the great things about France is they love their vacations. So every 6 to 8 weeks, you'll have 2 weeks off, and those vacations are paid. So you'll have lots of time to travel should you wish. So these are just a few pictures. This is Stockholm, Copenhagen, Portugal on the bottom, Scotland, Amsterdam, Budapest, Vienna, Italy, Sicily. On the left there, some of you might recognize King's Landing. That was in Croatia from Game of Thrones. So I'm sure you're wondering what the application process is like. It's actually pretty straightforward. The largest portion, and I think what people get most nervous about, is you do have to write a statement of purpose that's in French. So definitely take some time to work on that. And then you just need to upload other official documents like university transcripts, passport. You do need to get a letter of recommendation, and you need to have one person evaluate your French language skills. So that can either be a university professor, or it can be a language evaluator from the Alliance Française. And there is an Alliance Française in Honolulu. It's right on Ala Moana Boulevard. So you can go there. If you don't have a French professor, maybe you haven't taken French courses, or it's been a really, really long time, you can also go to the Alliance Française and ask to take a French language exam. And then you can upload those scores to prove that you have the proficiency that you need to participate. And then you'll just have to provide, of course, other basic information about yourself and any experience you have teaching or working abroad. So as I already said, you can participate in the program twice, but you don't have to reapply twice. At the end of your first year, they'll ask you if you want to renew. And if you have a good relationship with your schools and you say yes, usually they'll take you back on. At the time of your application, that's when you rank the top 3 regions, or what they call academies, that you would like to work in. Keep in mind that some are much more popular than others. So for example, Paris is in high demand. They'll also ask you at this time if you have a preference for primary or secondary schools, or either. And how this works is in this process, candidates are ranked by their application, the strength of their application, and then they're placed by ranking. So if you have a very strong application, then they'll place you first, and they'll give you first preference for region and for type of school you want to work in. So it's really to your advantage to take the time and try to make your application as strong as possible. A few tips, definitely emphasize any experience you have teaching or working with young people. This is what they want to see most. However, if you don't have any official teaching experience, that's okay. I didn't when I went over. You can emphasize any experience you have mentoring, or if you're a camp counselor, or even babysitting. Just make sure to talk about what interaction you've had with young learners. Emphasize any experience you have living, working, or traveling abroad. But again, if you haven't had the opportunity to travel, that's okay, and that's understandable. You can also talk about any experience you have working with international or multicultural communities. So that could be in a club, for example, at university, or if you go to a conversation group. A teaching certificate isn't necessary, but it could definitely give you an edge in your application, because like I said, they love to see any experience teaching or working with learners. And if your main goal is to improve French, I recommend that you request to work in primary schools. This is because in secondary schools, French teachers are actually specialized in teaching English. So that's what they do, they teach English. So they'll want to converse with you in English because it's what they love to do. However, in primary schools, French is obligatory, but teachers aren't necessarily given any training in, I'm sorry, English is obligatory, but they're not necessarily giving any training in English. So they'll really see you as the expert, and oftentimes they'll want to speak with you in French because they're more comfortable with it. So, you know, lunch hours or recess or any planning will all be in French. And so your classes will be in English, everything else will be in French, and you'll have a lot of opportunities to improve your language skills. Another tip I have is for greater success to be flexible. The academies are really quite large. So even if you request to be in the Academy of Paris, that doesn't mean you'll be in Paris itself. You might be an hour or two outside of Paris. So the more flexible you are in where you're placed, the more success you'll have and the greater chance you'll have of being placed. Here's the application timeline. So applications for this upcoming cohort are due 2 months from today, so you have plenty of time to apply. If you're selected, they'll let you know by the first week of April, and then you'll receive a work contract in June or August with your placement and your schools, and then you'll be off. All right, here's where you can go to get more information. I definitely recommend checking out their website. They have a fantastic FAQ page. When you want to apply, you can just go to tapis.org. Check out their social media. They post lots of updates there and really great pictures of France that'll make you want to travel there and go. I also put the website for the Alliance Française because they have a lot of great resources, and in case you need to go there to get a language evaluation. Like all of these programs, I just want to emphasize that, you know, it's a great opportunity to travel and to work on your language skills and to teach, but definitely view it as a good professional development opportunity, because whether or not you want to continue with language teaching, you'll gain a lot of skills that are really attractive to many employers and schools if you decide to continue on with your education. With this program, they have a really large alumni network, and they have opportunities for scholarships afterwards for alumni, for people who want to go to graduate school and study French. And here's my contact information. I absolutely love talking to prospective TAPIF applicants, so please do contact me. I'm happy to give you more information or to talk to you more in detail about my experience. And that's it from me. Thank you so much.
All right, thanks very much, Haley. So we've had 5 different programs that we've talked about for teaching English as a second language overseas, 5 fantastic programs. Next up, what do you do to get yourself ready to be able to teach overseas? I'll talk briefly about the Department of Second Language Studies, and then Joel Weaver is going to talk more about a program offered at the Hawaii English Language Program, CELTA. So Second Language Studies has a bachelor's program, a master's, a doctoral program, and what's called an advanced graduate certificate program. We look at how people learn second languages, how people effectively teach second languages, and how second languages are used in local and global societies. And actually just about anything else that has to do with multilingualism and multiculturalism. That's all covered in SLS. But within the undergraduate program in SLS, we do have something that can be one relatively easy way. If you don't want to get a second language studies major, you could get a minor. And we have a minor in language teaching. And so it's a total of 18 credits. We could say just 18 credits. So if you're majoring in French or Japanese or Korean or Tagalog or any other language, and you want to get something that supplements that and gives you a chance to go overseas and teach English and know what you're doing when you step in the classroom, this is a great way to do that. The minor has 3 courses that introduce basic linguistic concepts, a course on how people learn second languages, and a course that looks at teaching methods and other issues connected to teaching. And then we have 9 credits of electives. 312 and 313 cover techniques for teaching reading and writing or listening and speaking. Instructional media is really how you can use technology for language teaching. English phonology, it should actually be spelled F-U-N-ology, as one of our professors used to say. Just learns more about the sound system of English and how to teach pronunciation. We have a teaching practicum. And 480p is a variable topics course on pedagogy. This coming spring, Michelle is going to be teaching a course on teaching and materials development with a global Englishes focus. Ask either Michelle or me about that if you have questions about that. And then a course on second language testing. So you can get a really solid grounding in what you need to be able to go overseas and hit the ground running and not have a brick wall in front of you when you do that. 18 credits is a lot though. And so that some of you may be about to graduate and think, well, too late for that. There is another great option, and Joel is going to talk about the CELTA.
Thanks, Kenny. That was a great and very rapid scan through the BA of the minor in SLS. Did you make me a co-host so I can share?
Oops, you should be okay to share anyway.
Okay, looks like I am, yeah. Okay. Okay, as Kenny said, this is an option for those of you out there who don't have the time to either get a full-on minor or a master's. But I want to share about the CELTA program, the Certificate in Teaching English to Speakers of Other Languages. Actually, that doesn't match the acronym. The acronym CELTA actually stands for the Certificate in English Language Teaching for Adults, but then they didn't like that name, so they kept the name CELTA, and then they changed the words that are attached to it. Anyway, this is a great option, very practical. It's the world's foremost initial qualification, or one of the world's foremost initial qualifications for teaching English. Yesterday, for example, I got an email from somebody saying, what's the difference between CELTA and a TESOL certificate? Really, the CELTA is the most widely recognized TESOL certificate or TEFL certificate. There are many outfits out there that are offering TEFL or TESOL certificates, but it's hit or miss in terms of quality of that product. The CELTA are only run by approved centers, and the center is spelled like the British because this is out of Britain, based on specifications produced by the Cambridge Assessment English, which is the outfit, and in British English, the syndicate, which makes it sound like a criminal organization, the syndicate that offers, that accredits and authorizes centers. And basically you go through quite a series of steps to be able to be authorized. I actually, when I was at a previous school, a local ESL school, I brought CELTA. It was the first time it was ever offered in Hawaii. I brought that to Hawaii back in 2001. And then when I came to UH 12 years ago or so, I brought it over here. So this is something that HELP has been offering since 2009, 2010. And it's trusted by employers, language schools, and governments around the world. And it's designed for candidates with little or no previous teaching experience. So this is really a way to get your feet wet in just the general idea. And it's very quick. It's 4 or 5 weeks in the way that we operate. There's an equal emphasis on theory and methodology. And there's a lot of hands-on teaching practice and guided feedback, which is one of the most valuable parts of it. A lot of times we get inquiries from people who want to do a TESOL certificate online. We don't do that because we're really, and actually we get inquiries because I run the Hawaii English Language Program here at UH, part of DSLS. And we get a lot of inquiries for people wanting to do their practicum with us. That's not what we provide to the outside people, but people who take the CELTA, we set up actual classrooms. So from the second day of the CELTA, they're actually delivering, little micro lessons within the context and getting immediate feedback. We offer it, as I mentioned, in the summer as a 4 or 5 week full-time intensive program. It's very intensive. People say, can I keep my job and work on the weekends and do this course? We don't advise people to do anything except the CELTA during that period of time, just because it's so intense and there's a lot of work crammed into 120 hours, but there's hours in addition to that that are required. UHM students, I know there's a bunch of UHM or SLS people on this in this presentation. You can earn SLS course credit, basically an independent reading, $4.99, and you can inquire with me for more information about that. And the great thing is, let me go back to that. There's a discount available for SLS students taking CELTA at HELP, $250 discount off the cost. Here's a testimonial. I won't read through the whole thing, but basically, we got rave reviews from some of our CELTA participants. Here's another one. Some people might know Catherine Gardner, who's a GA in the Spanish department now, with an outstanding SLS grad as well. And people have come out of this just really raving about the experience they had with the CELTA we offer at HELP. Because of our connection with the department, it has an extra added benefit of the collegiality that's evident throughout SLS department for people who are training to be English language teachers. As I said, it's 120 plus hours. You observe experienced teachers in action for a total of 6 hours of that time. You get practice teaching both beginner and intermediate level ESL classes. And as I mentioned, you get daily feedback from the course instructors. There's 4 writing assignments that have to be completed to the CELTA standard, and then maintain and submit a portfolio of all coursework, including all written assignments and materials related to their teaching practice. This coming year, we haven't been offering it since 2019 because of COVID. So we're really excited about getting started again. So our first course is a 4-week super intensive course right after the end of spring semester. It runs for 4 weeks till June 10th. And then the second course is a 5-week and what we call a semi-intensive. It's still intensive, but not quite as intensive as the 4-week course. That'll run from June 20th to July 22nd. Again, 8:30 to 5 for both of those. Total course cost is $2,400. And as I mentioned, there's a $250 discount for SLS students, brings it down to $2,150, which you cannot find anywhere else in the US. It is possible to go overseas and get the CELTA, but hey, why wouldn't you take it from the Department of Second Language Studies? The application procedures are here. Actually, I'll jump right. I'll explain this. So you submit an application, then there's a pre-interview task that you get after your application is received. Then there's an interview with one of the CELTA trainers. There's 2 trainers on each course. And the trainer will discuss your expectations for the course and determine your suitability. And then if you're accepted based on that video interview, then you pay the remaining tuition and start reading the required books. And there's one other task that you have to do before the course begins. More information is available on the HELP website. Go to manoa.hawaii.edu/ESL help is our main website. And actually, real quickly, I'll show you, I'll stop share and bring that up real quickly here. So on our website, you can see all the information about the CELTA is here. And then down here is the application form. So you can just go in there and grab the application off of there. And if you have any questions, just write CELTA@hawaii.edu. And we'd be glad to answer any questions you have. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Joel. And thank you again, the other panelists, for giving us a lot of information. We have 15 plus minutes. We can take any questions. Feel free. My screen, the number of people participating goes on to 2 pages, so I'm not going to be able to see if you raise your hand. I would say either just put it in the chat or just start talking if you've got a question, and address which program you have your question to. And I will stop recording now.